the business of sodomy comes in. But it's interesting because that's like 4 cantos earlier, and I had completely missed it until somebody put me onto it last week.
Okay.
And apparently Cahors is usury, according to this, something I scribbled down.
Yeah, and I think Bruno Latini's family was involved in money lending, and Dante's family, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I just to give credit where credit is due, I think the person who brought that point up from Canto 11 was the honorable member from Cleveland whose dog has a penchant for chasing squirrels.
There we go.
Or anything else.
There we go. Or anything else, anything that moves. Let me briefly welcome anybody who might be watching this on YouTube, since I started the YouTube thing late. And let me just point out that today we are going to be finishing up our reading and discussion of Canto 15. And very, very likely we'll go on to Canto 16. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy watching the meeting. Okay. And with that, we will go directly to the English reader, and the first English reader will be Sylvia. So Sylvia, if you have finished your dinner, if you finished your dinner.
Are you okay with that, Dave?
Oh, sure. Carry on, and I'll follow up. Sure.
There is a mountain there that is called Ida.
Wait.
Canto 15, line 93, right?
7.
97.
97. Oh, wait a minute. Canto 15.
Canto 15. Mm-hmm.
Oh, why have I got still?
Okay.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I actually hope you can start on 91, because I think I'd like to explore that a little more.
Okay.
91. Sorry. Canto 15, okay?
Yes.
91. This much, at least, let me make clear to you, if my conscience continues not to blame me. I am ready for whatever fortune wants. This prophecy is not new to my ears. And so let fortune turn her wheel, spinning it as she pleases, and the peasant turn his spade. My master, hearing this, looked to the right. Then, turning round and facing me, he said, "He listens well who notes well what he hears." But I did not hear him. I went on talking, walking with Ser Brunetto, asking him who of his company were most distinguished. Shall I stop there?
Sure.
No. So, and this, just pause. The fortune is that Brunetto has foretold what Dante is going to experience in Florence later.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's what I wanted to kind of get set in place in my brain.
Okay.
So
excellent.
Why don't you keep reading, Sylvia, unless anybody else.
Before Sylvia keeps reading, if I can make one brief comment here. This is lines 91 through 93. Actually, from lines 91 to 96. This is a major change in personality for Dante. This is not the guy who at the very beginning of this poem was terrified of the dark wood and pleading for help and not knowing what to do. This is a pretty confident fellow. You know, Latini's telling him that, there's all this stuff is going to happen. And Dante says this much, I will, let's see, provided that my conscience, hold on. I've got a minor emergency to tend to, so I'll be back.
Oh,
Right.
Hold on just a second.
Just to follow
Shall we
up,
talk amongst ourselves?
sure.
And
Just to
what?
follow up on Duncan's point. So if this is a new attitude, why? Well, maybe the answer lies in the fact that he's run into a guy who's building him up.
Yeah,
Because
right.
as Latini said, I mean, you've got a pretty bright future as a poet, and this is, as I mentioned earlier, Didi, when you quite rightly asked for a summary. I mean, this is a different kind of encounter than he's had so
Right.
often in the past. There's not anger or frustration or fear. This is a really positive experience for him.
And his brunetto, his teacher, compliments him. Line 99, I think it is. He listeneth well who noteth it.
That's
He's a
not that. That's
good
not him
listener.
saying. That's Virgil who's saying that.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. So Virgil
I
is
I
encouraged.
assume that he refers back to Virgil.
No, I think he's referring to Brunetto.
Well,
No, it's Virgil.
Yeah.
Said to me.
I saw the right side of my master's face turn back in my direction, and he said,
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I see it. Thank you.
An interesting, actually, an elucidating error, though, Didi, because to an extent, Latini seems to appear here in the guise of a master as well, for the young Dante, for the budding Dante.
Yeah, and he turned backward. It may not be evident.
What is? I get the fortune turning her wheel and spinning it in my version, but what is the peasant turn his spade? What does that refer to? Does anybody?
we discussed that last week, and it's possibly a reference to the god Saturn, who carries a hoe and who is a symbol of time passing.
Oh yeah, I have that note in my. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we should go ahead.
I have
Okay.
in my note, Didi, I think you're working out of the Sayers edition too. I have in my note for Sayers that at 99, well heeded is well heard, that Virgil is actually chiding Dante a bit for not taking seriously enough the prophecy of Latini.
Yes, he's reinforcing it.
Yeah.
Virgil seems not altogether to approve this parade of indifference and warns Dante that he will do well to heed what is said to him. So, yeah.
Sure. That makes more sense.
In there is another note in Sayers about the sodomites. I don't think you read that one. The sodomites are chosen as the image of all perverse vices which damage and corrupt the natural powers of the body. It is here, for instance, that Dante would probably place drug takers and the vicious type of alcoholics. They're perpetual, fruitless, let me see, running forces, a parallel on a lower level to the aimless drifting of the lustful in Canto 5.
Oh.
So I think sodomites is more, it's more of a global term than a specific.
And maybe Dante is suggesting that. We should go on.
Dave, do you want to go on?
Sure. Okay, if that's good, then I will. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just pick it up just before you left off here. Yet nonetheless, I move on in debate with Ser Brunetto, asking him whose fame in all his band is widest and most great. And then the answer. Some, he replies, it will be well to name. The rest we must pass over for sheer dearth of time. 'Twould take too long to mention them. All these in brief were clerks and men of worth in letters and in scholarship, none more so, and all defiled by one same taint on earth. In that sad throng goes Francis of Accorso, and Priscian. Could thy hunger have been sated by such scabbed meat, thou might have seen also him whom the servant of servants once translated from Arno to Baciglione, where he left the body he'd unstrung and enervated. Would say more, but must not, for a drift of fresh dust rising from the sandy ground warns me to cease and make my going swift.
Yeah,
Here
this
comes
is
some.
interesting to me.
I've just, Dee Dee, I'll read the last two verses, and then why don't we launch into a discussion?
Okay.
Here come some folk with whom I mayn't be found. Keep handy my thesaurus, where I yet live on. I ask no more. Then he turned round, and seemed like one of those who over the flat and open course in the fields beside Verona run for the green cloth, and he seemed at that not like a loser, but the winning runner.
Mm. Is thesaurus?
It's Tesoro.
Tesoro.
Yeah, Dave, does your translation say thesaurus?
It does, actually.
Wow.
I've got
Because it's really Tesoro, which is one of Ser Brunetto's works.
Okay.
Yes. He had two. He had Tesoretto and he had Tesor. It has long been assumed that Brunetto asks Dante's affectionate remembrance of his tresor, meaning treasure. In the opinion of some, however, it is far better to understand that the work in question is the Tesoretto. To suggest as much as not to deny the importance of the French encyclopedia. So I don't know enough about this to even comment, but apparently Brunetto possibly did two, among other productions. And one was called Treasure or Tresor in Italian, and the other one was Tesoretto, which is not treasure because there's no R in it. It's Tesoretto. But I think what in this passage we're talking about is Tresor, and I'll see if I can find anything more about Tresor. Brunetto, vernacular. He also wrote in the vernacular. Oh, he did El Tesoro, but which became known as Tesoretto, meaning little treasure. So oddly enough, little treasure has no R in it. It's Tesoretto.
Okay.
Well, it's Italian and French, I think.
That may be it, of course.
The Tresor, which I have Singleton's commentary, and on line 85, he quotes the Tresor briefly. Brunetto says, and it's French. So apparently he wrote in both languages.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the extent of my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you for mentioning it.
The Tesoretto, as it has continued to be called, was at that point, even though incomplete, the longest narrative poem composed in Italian.
Oh,
Well, that's ironic. That the little treasure would be the longest poem.
Yeah.
So, is anything else on Tesoro? Further back up, the cynic cited nerves. That is talking. Latini is talking about figures in this part of Inferno. But the sin excited, I thought, were the sodomists, where would have been in the 14 and those with sins against their own bodies. So I'm curious about this, where he has left his sin excited nerves.
Ah, well, that possibly is a reference to sex involved in your sinews, which would be between your legs.
Well, some of your sinews.
Yes.
There are
But
sinews everywhere.
Canto. Why in this canto, according to, I don't know, this is about heretics, blasphemers.
And sodomites.
Sodomites.
Are the sodomites here too? Because,
Yes.
oh, okay, that's
so
why.
My translation says sin stretched sinews, which is pretty hot.
Hollander says this last verse indicating, this last verse. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead without me. I realized I didn't have my microphone on.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. So Hollander says this last verse indicating Andrea's sin-stretched sinews would, however, seem to indicate his sexual activity. And the meaning of this line is thus hotly contested by those who deny that homosexuality is punished in this ring.
I wrote St. Augustine here, but I have no idea why. There must be a reason. We don't have to figure it out now, unless we want to.
Actually, Lois, before we move on, I want to thank you for bringing that translation business to my attention. Thesaurus is what Sayers had it translated. I also have the modern library edition, which I don't use much, and it backs you. Let my treasure, in which I still live, be commended to thee, and more I ask not. And I think probably it's one of the many benefits of taking this as a group where we're coming at it with a variety of translations, that we can sort of red flag something that doesn't fit. And clearly Sayers' translation is at odds with everything else that, that people are getting as their translations. So that's good. It's good to know that.
And in my translations as well, it says it's Brunetto's most significant composition. This is Musa, written in French it was written during his exile in France, and it is an encyclopedic work written in French prose.
Okay. Let me read the Hollander note, if I may. It is far better to understand the work in question as a tesoretto. This is not to deny the importance of the French encyclopedia treatise for Dante, who knew it well, and whose memory is suffused by it. However, given his predilection for poetry, it seems likely that for him, the pivotal work was the Tesoretto, because it was the primary Italian model for the comedy. So I think that's a pretty strong sentence there. Primary Italian model.
Read that again. That would be worth hearing again, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Okay. I'll go back a little bit. It says, it has long been assumed that Brunetto asked Dante's affectionate remembrance of his Tresor. In the opinion of some, however, it is far better to understand the work in question is the Tesoretto. This is not to deny the importance of the French encyclopedic treatise for Dante, who knew it well and whose memory is suffused by it. However, given Dante's predilection for poetry, it seems likely that for him the pivotal work was the Tesoretto, because it was the primary Italian model for the comedy. Did you hear that clearly, Dave?
I did, and I thank you for repeating it. It was worth
Yeah,
hearing.
no problem.
So where does that leave us? Pray tell.
I think it leaves us with the reality that one of the really primary functions of this canto is for Dante to receive Burnetto's praise and for Dante to give huge recognition to Burnetto as an influence for the Commedia, and that the other issues involved are relatively minor. That's how I'm looking at it right at this point. Because as I understand it, Burnetto, you can say all kinds of things about Burnetto, but one thing was he was not religious. And therefore he would not fit into purgatory or the paradise. But that Dante felt compelled to give Burnetto some credit and to be mentioned in his, what even Dante considered was going to be his, Dante's greatest work.
We have other things.
I don't know
in
whether
there.
I've overwhelmed you with my brilliance or that you were saying this guy is so twisted, I'm not going to say anything about this one.
No, I think what you say is correct, but and there's also a lot of other extraneous to me stuff in these last couple of tercets. Who are the people he's not allowed to be seen with? What's the new smoke rising from the sand? That I don't quite understand. I understand what he's saying in the next to the last tercet, maybe. He's basically saying, remember my book, remember me. But I don't know who these people are he's not allowed to see. I would say more, but I cannot continue talking. For over there, I see new smoke rising from the sand. People are coming with whom I must not be. I don't know who that is, what that is.
Can you give me a line number, Lois?
Yeah, it starts at 115.
Oh, okay. Okay. And this is Burnetto talking, or this is
That's how I understand it. Yes.
Yeah, me too, Lois.
becoming and discard can be no longer, for that I behold new smoke arising yonder from the sand. A people comes with whom I may not be. Commend unto thee be my tesor. Well, for some reason, it seems that Burnetto, in his wandering with Dante, has wandered a little out of his territory.
Yes. Well, we know he's going along beside him as they're walking together.
But
Mhm.
maybe
Yes.
maybe
He has
these
to, sorry,
characters,
he has to stay with his group.
maybe
Yeah.
He's
these
not allowed. He's not
Yeah,
allowed to mix.
yeah.
So that's the new
So,
group coming
yeah.
from
So
behind.
whatever the group is, this is a question of group. I have to stay with my group. We as readers don't really care what that other group may be.
but those characters are probably in Brunetto's encyclopedia, and probably they too are heretics and schismatics. That's
Possibly.
what I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it has the thing about new smoke arising yonder from the sand, and that new smoke arising yonder from the sand is is a signal of the blasphemers, I think.
And it's interesting too to go back to 106. You know, when he answers Dante's question, hey, so who you hanging out with? And basically he says, all these in brief were clerks and men of worth in letters and in scholarship, none more so, and all defiled by the one same taint on earth. So in other words, we're dealing in this circle with some pretty high octane intellectual power, aren't we?
Yeah, in Sayre's at the beginning of her comments on this canto, it is here, for instance, that Dante would probably put drug takers and the vicious types of alcoholics. Their perpetual fruitless running forms a parallel on a lower level to the aimless drifting of the lustful in Canto 5. So that seems they probably smoke psychedelic, mind altering whatever's.
Wasn't there an earlier image, though, of fire falling from the sky and hitting the sand and smoke of vapors of water arising out of it?
I think you're referring to the
Beginning of the
blasphemer section.
canto.
Yeah, it
And
was
I
an
think-
earlier canto.
Yeah, I think it came from 14.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're only on 15 now, right?
Yeah.
And 14, I believe, was the blasphemers, where we had the fellow who blasphemed against Zeus. And then we had the old man of Cyprus. And I think that the idea there is that in their blasphemy, they had obliterated the vitality of nature. With their scorn, represented by fire, they had obliterated the green, growing vitality of nature and reduced it to sand. That's how I generally interpret all that at this point.
And there's no question that it's a hot place, because on in the canto beginning, sorry, in the verse beginning at 25, when he put out his hand to me, I stared at his scorched face, searching him through and through. So I don't think you're going to get frostbite in this particular ring. Does anybody have a note on 106 to 108?
106.
It's the one I read. All these in brief
Yeah.
men of earth and letters
Yeah.
and scholarship.
Yeah. I have a Hollander note here.
Yeah, Hollander.
Say,
You want to read it, Lois? The Hollander note?
Brunetto indicates that all his companions were men of letters, identifying Priscian, the great Latin grammarian of the early 6th century, Francesco da Corso, a renowned jurist of Bologna, and Andrea da Mozzi, a Florentine. He was made Bishop of Florence, which is on the Arno, hence the reference, until he was transferred to Vicenza, which is on the Bacchiglione, by Pope Boniface VIII, who is the servant of servants, here ironically referred to with the papal formula servant of servants. So he was, this guy, Andrea da Mozzo, had been a bishop in Florence, but then he was transferred to Vincenzi. None of these, neither is Brunetto, by the way, none of these, including Brunetto, is recorded by other writers as having been homosexual. The last verse, including Andrea's sin-stretched sinews, would, however, seem to indicate his sexual activity. And the meaning of this line is thus hotly contested by those who deny that homosexuality is punished in this ring. See the end note to the next canto. So we'll see what happens in 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As we were saying last week, we had that discussion, you know, with Massey and I don't know if there were other Italians. Yeah, they were disputing that that was referring to homosexuality. And then wasn't somebody saying that somebody else in this group saying that homosexuality was very present in, I think you were, John. Yeah.
I mentioned that there is a book that talks about the what do I say? The commonness of homosexual practices in forensic. And then I put forth the theory that perhaps sodomy was practiced. It wasn't necessarily homosexuality. And perhaps it was practiced to a certain extent, because the one thing that is true of sodomy is you can't get anybody pregnant. And that to me seemed like would be a real concern for the people in Florence, or actually in medieval time period. Pure speculation on my part.
There's another odd thing in the Hollander note for line 118 about the two, that he can't be seen with this other group. What is the division that separates these two groups of homosexuals? We should note that Brunetto, accompanying Dante, has gone lower down the sloping sand than he generally does. His group apparently remains higher up. The only clue given us by the text is that his fellows are all men of letters, while the next group will be made up of politicians. But then Brunetto must be considered, at least to some degree, a politician himself. Is that what keeps them separate? It does not seem likely. Well, thank you for wasting my time, Hollander. You put that all together and then say no. It would rather seem that the two groups are kept separate by their particular form of sexual deviance, as Boccaccio appears to suggest.
You're not going to continue the note there?
That's all I have. I have 119.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll continue that note.
Yeah.
For instance, as Professor John Gledson suggested when he was a graduate student at Princeton, the first group may all have been pederasts, men who preferred young boys for their sexual encounters. The second may have been sodomites, those who enjoyed such contact with those of their own age. It seems, however, impossible to come to any decision with certainty. And I find Hollander in this regard interesting, but not totally persuasive.
Dispositive.
I think
And Sayers has Brunetto being a politician, Florentine politician. So there's that too.
yeah, for some reason, I think Dante wanted to keep all this pretty ambiguous of what he was doing here.
Yeah.
And I will fall back on my earlier speculation that what he really wanted to do is he needed to fit Brunetto in somewhere. And he couldn't put him in Purgatory, and he couldn't put him in Paradiso. So he developed this very ambiguous level where we really can't tell what it's about, except that all these people are not practicing, they're not living a Christian life in some way. And that's where he decided to deal with Brunetto and to give his kudos to Brunetto.
And he's cooperating with the church, Dante cooperating with the church dictates in that instance.
Duncan, does Barolini throw any light on it?
Good question. let's see. She does a lot of stuff, and I could read a lot of notes here. And she does say that this is about sexuality. And Dante's treatment of homosexuality is clearly progressive when read in the context of vision literature and when viewed in the context of art, like blah, blah, blah. Again, as in Inferno 5, Dante does not, Inferno 5, remember, is Paolo and Francesca, does not engage in the commonplace vision. Yeah, I think I'm just going to recommend that you go to Digital Dante and look at Barolini's notes. But I will say that Barolini, whose opinion I generally highly respect, does seem to think that this is about homosexuality.
Yeah, I'm sure she did a huge amount of research behind that opinion.
Oh, yeah, she's truly a dedicated scholar. But she stresses that Dante's treatment of homosexuality, both here and in the Purgatorio, is highly progressive. And it's not necessarily a diatribe in either case against homosexuality itself. It is some sort of excess that
And my sense of what she writes in general is that Dante's ambiguity is deliberate, these ambiguities of his.
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah,
say that Tesoro had some influence in the comedy.
it did.
Because he was his master.
Yes, and the Tesoretto, the longest poem, up to that point anyway, in Italian, in Hollander's notes, he says that the Tesoretto was the main model for the Commedia.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read this one note from Barolini. Dante could have precluded any discussion of saved sodomites. He talks about saved sodomites in Purgatorio by simply ignoring homosexuality outside of the Inferno. Moreover, had he avoided any reference to sodomy in the Purgatorio, as he so easily could have done, he would have avoided the need to reclassify it. Sodomy in the Commedia would have remained classified in only one way, as a sin of violence against nature, without needing to undergo the reclassification required by the transition to purgatory. As a result of the decision to reference sodomy in the Purgatorio, homosexuality is reclassified as a form of lust, and thus homosexuals undergo purgation along with heterosexuals on the terrace of lust. So it's once again, it's not the act itself, it's when the act goes beyond logic and reason.
And it's of course in this canto combined with heresy.
Blasphemy.
Heresy, blasphemy, schismatics.
Yeah, we kind of have, we started with the heretics, then we moved to the blasphemers, and now we're at this, what I consider ambiguous category.
But can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Was in Dante's time, was a homosexuality a sin?
It was punishable.
In the
Punishable.
church. You mean in the church and
Or,
In the legal-
generally.
It was widely practiced.
Yeah,
And generally, when something is illegal or against the church, but widely practiced, at least in my mind, that generally means that it wasn't treated too seriously.
yeah. And so, but maybe the church is trying to take more control and a sense of power over this type of illegal activity.
Well,
Sure, and-
isn't there also the sense that in the Christian or Catholic concept, the only reason for sex is procreation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
so whether you're having sex that's same sex or different sex, if it's not going to lead to procreation, it's wrong.
Yeah.
When does that emerge in
Mhm.
church
Mhm.
history? Do you know?
I can't say.
Yeah, me neither.
Mhm. You know, I'm sorry to say, but I am going to have to jump ship at this point.
Oh,
But please continue on. And
Should we look forward to your return?
no, in this case, you will
Okay.
not. I will not be returning. And perhaps, I guess, Ann Doyle. Ann Doyle, you're still suffering from
Oh,
jet
I'm fine.
by any
Thank you.
chance? Is she still?
No.
Is she here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right. You've been quite quiet today, as far as I'm.
I'm on catch up.
Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna say thank you all very much. I wish I could
Okay.
stay, but I have to abandon ship at this point.
you.
But
Okay. See you next
See you
time.
next week.
okay.
not
See you next week.
Ulysses.
Bye.
And let's see. I'm gonna leave the meeting. And Ann Doyle, are you fine with being the
Yeah, no problem. I'm fine. Perfect. Yeah, okay.
Should we read the next canto, or are we still unfinished?
I think we've just about beat everything we can out of 15.
Until next round.
there was some optimism that we might have some answers in Canto 16. We'll see.
Okay, so we have the reading list.
So we're going to do Italian first.
We only have two
there's
Italian.
Yeah, there's only two left.
Okay. Did you just finish reading, Dave?
I did. So I would
Yes.
I would humbly pass the
Lois.
torch on to Lois,
Lois.
the honorable member from New York City.
Okay.
Is there a feeling, John, that Andesio, that you don't want to do Italian?
Usually we have three readers when we
Yeah.
do Italian. But
Up to you.
what do you guys want?
I think we should read Italian when Duncan is here and you have three. So we can be backwards this time.
Why don't we just read the English? Because it's after 3.
And we'll read it straight through.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. I have arrived where we could hear the distant roar of water falling to the lower circle like the rumbling hum of bees around a hive. When 3 shades at a run broke from a passing crowd under the rain of bitter torment. Under that rain of bitter torment. Together they came towards us, each one calling, "Stop, you, who by your garb appear to be a man from our degenerate city." Oh, what sores I noticed on their limbs, both old and new ones, branded by the flames. It pains me still when I remember them. My teacher was attentive to their cries, then turned his face to me and said, "Now wait. To these one must show courtesy." And were it not for the fire that the nature of this place draws down, I would say that haste suits you far more than it does them. Next.
As soon as we stood still, they recommenced the old refrain, and when they overtook us, formed of themselves a wheel, all three of them, as champions stripped and oiled are wont to do, watching for their advantage and their hold, before they come to blows and thrusts between them. Thus wheeling round did every one his visage direct to me, so that in opposite wise his neck and feet continual journey made. And if the misery of this soft place bring in disdain ourselves and our entreaties, began one and our aspect black and blistered, let the renown of us thy mind incline to tell us who thou art, who thus securely thy living feet dost move along through hell. Next, please.
He in whose footprints thou dost see me treading, naked and skinless, though he now may go, was of a greater rank than thou dost think. He was the grandson of the good Goldrada. His name was Guido Guerra, and in life much did he with his wisdom and his sword. The other who close by me treads the sand, Tegeio Adobrande is, whose fame above there in the world should welcome be. And I, who with them on the cross am placed, Jacopo Restitucci was, and truly my savage wife more than aught else doth harm me. Could I have been protected from the fire below, I should have thrown myself amongst them, and think the teacher who would have suffered it, But as I should have burned and baked myself, my terror overmastered my goodwill, which made me greedy of embracing them. Next.
Then I began, sorrow and not disdain. Did your condition fix within me so that startlingly I wholly is stripped off? As soon as this my Lord said unto me words, on account of which I thought within me that people such as you were approaching. Oh, I of your city am, and evermore your labors and your honorable names. I with affection have retraced and there. I leave the gall and go for the sweet fruits promised to me by the valor veracious leader. But to the center first I needs must plunge. So may the soul for a long while conduct those limbs of thine. Did he make answer them, and so may thy renown shine after thee. Valor and courtesy say if they dwell within our city, as they used to do, or if they wholly have gone out of it. Next. Next, please.
Okay. Let me. For Giglio Borsier, who is in torment with us of late, and goes there with his comrades, doth greatly mortify us with his words. The new inhabitants and the sudden gains, pride and extravagance have in thee engendered, Florence, so that thou weepest thereat already. In this wise I exclaimed with face uplifted, and the three, taking that for my reply, looked at each other as one looks at truth. If other times so little it thou cost thee, replied they all, to satisfy another, happy art thou, thus speaking as they will. Therefore, if thou escape from these dark places, and come to behold the beauteous stars, when it shall pleasure thee to say I was. See that thou speak of us unto the people. Then they broke up the wheel, and in their flight it seems as if their agile legs were wings. Next, please.
Not an amen could possibly be said so rapidly as they had disappeared. Wherefore the master deemed best to depart. I followed him, and little had we gone before the sound of water was so near us that speaking we should hardly have been heard, even as that stream which holdeth its own course, the first from Monte Veso towards the east, upon the left-hand slope of Apennine, which is above called Aquachetta, ere it down descendeth into its low bed, and at Forli is vacant of that name. Reverberates there above San Benedito from Alps by falling at a single leap, where for 1,000 there were room enough. Next.
So down a single rocky precipice, we find the tainted waters falling, roaring, sound loud enough to deafen us in seconds. I wore a cord that fastened round my waist, with which I once had thought I might be able to catch the leopard with the gaudy skin. As soon as I removed it from my body, just as my guide commanded me to do, I gave it to him, looped in a coil. Then, taking it and turning to the right, he flung it quite a distance past the bank and down into the deepness of the pit. Now, surely something strange is going to happen, I thought to myself, to answer the strange signal whose course my master follows with his eyes. How cautious a man must be in company with one who can not only see his actions, but read his mind and understand his thoughts. Next, Dave.
Oh, it will come, said he, and quickly too, the thing I look for. What thy fancies frame there in thy head will soon be in thy view. When truth looks like a lie, a man's to blame. Not to sit still if he can and hold his tongue, or he'll only cover his innocent head with shame. But here I can't be silent. And by the song of this comedy reader, hear me swear, so may my work find favor and live long, that I beheld through that dark murky air come swimming up a shape most marvelously strange for even the steadfast heart to bear. As he returns that has gone down to free the anchor from whatever's fouling it, or rock or other thing hid under sea, spreading his arms and gathering up his feet.
Okay. Am I the next to read? And we'll do a few tercets at a time. Is that the process?
Should I
Okay.
read Sarah's introduction to this?
Sure.
Okay. The story. Dante is already within earshot of the waterfall at the end of the path when he meets the shades of 3 distinguished Florentine noblemen and gives them news of their city. At the edge of the cliff, Virgil throws Dante's girdle into the gulf below, and in answer to this signal, a strange form comes swimming up toward them.
Okay. I had arrived where we could hear the distant roar of water falling to the lower circle, like the rumbling hum of bees around a hive, when 3 shades at a run broke from a passing crowd under the rain of bitter torment. Together they came towards us, each one calling, "Stop you, who by your garb appear to be a man from our degenerate city." Everybody understands that, right? They can tell by his dress that he's from Florence.
And earlier, among the heretics. It was his Florentine dialect, I guess, that identified him to one of the heretics.
Okay, does someone want to pick up the reading if we're going to move on to the fourth tersage?
I think that's me. Ah me, what wounds I saw upon their limbs, recent and ancient, by the flames burnt in. It pains me still but to remember it. Unto their cries my teacher paused attentive. He turned his face towards me, and now wait. He said to these we should be courteous, and if it were not for the fire that darts, the nature of this region, I should say, that haste were more becoming thee than them. As soon as we stood still, they recommenced the old refrain, and when they overtook us, formed of themselves a wheel, all three of them. As champions stripped and oiled are wont to do, watching for their advantage and their hold, before they come to blows and thrusts between them. Thus wheeling round did every one his visage direct to me, so that in opposite wise his neck and feet continual journey made.
It seems you can envision it, yeah.
Yeah, I remember back with Brunetto, he said, "Do you want to sit here with me?" And he said, "I can't sit. We have to keep moving." So these three are doing it by, I guess, just moving around in a circle.
But it seems like there are three different people here. In the way I'm envisioning it, it's three people facing each other, let's say in a circle, but each of them individually continues to turn in place.
Sounds like wheeling round did everyone his visage direct to me. So they all turned, each turned separately and looked at Dante.
They want to have some news about Florence, these three guys.
And you know, the head was going one way and the feet were going the other way. Wheeling round, they were like whipping round.
And they are by the river Flageton, and this river goes in a fall, in a waterfall, to the deepest part of the inferno.
And we're halfway through the inferno.
Maybe 15, 16, yeah, from 30, 34 countries.
We're in the third.
We are almost in the middle of the journey.
And they want to stop him. Going on?
Yes, I think we should go on. Who's next to read?
Who just read, John?
I
Is that
just
me?
read.
Yes, you.
Oh,
What line is it?
20.
About 27-ish.
28,
Is
yeah.
this me? Me.
After Decio, it's Anne Doyle.
Oh,
Is
sorry.
I just read.
But Decio, did you read?
Oh, no, we skipped. Did somebody read after me or not?
I did.
Okay, so that was John. So then it's Dee Dee.
Okay, all right. And if the misery of this soft place bring in disdain upon ourselves, and our entreaties began one, and our aspect black and blistered, let the renown of us thy mind incline to tell us who thou art, who thus securely thy living feet dost move along through hell. He in whose footprints thou dost see me treading, naked and skinless though he now may go, was of a greater rank than thou dost think. He was the grandson of the good Goldrada. His name was Guido Guerra, and in life much did he with his wisdom and his sword. The other who close by me treads the sand, Teggeo Aldobrande is, whose fame above there in the world should welcome be, and I who with them on the cross am placed, Jacopo Rusticucci was, and truly my savage wife more than aught else doth harm me. Anything there? All these three people?
Who's his wife?
We don't know. Let's
Well,
see.
I have a note somewhere. He's blaming his wife for something.
I think he's saying his wife drove him to homosexuality.
Yeah, that's what the note says. Jacopo blames his unwilling wife for his turning to homosexuality. Do you want to hear more about these guys?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay. The first named of three Florentines is Guido Guerra, a member of the family of the Conti Guidi, one of the most powerful in northern Italy. Grandson of Guido Guerra IV and Gualdrada de Ravignani, he was notably successful Guelph political leader, leading them back from exile after the Battle of Monteperti, this in 1260. So to their crushing defeat of the Ghibellines at Benevento in 1266 and their restoration to power in the city. He died in 1272. The second guy, Teggeo Aldobrandi, of the noble Adimari family, contemporary and ally of Guido Guerra in the Guelph cause. Along with Guido, he counseled the Florentines not to engage in the expedition against Siena that ended in a disastrous defeat at Monteperti. The speaker is Jacopo Rusticucci, also a Guelph, but not like the two he names of noble rank, at least according to the Anonimo Fiorentino's commentary. His house and that of his neighbor, Teggeo, were destroyed in the aftermath of Monteperti. In the eyes of most readers, Jacopo blames his unwilling wife for his turning to homosexuality. But see Chiamenti, who argues that the adjective fiera, bestial, used of her, rather suggests her bestial pleasure in having anal intercourse with her husband, a form of sexual practice indeed considered sodomitic. I don't know why I get to do all these explanations.
It's like me with Ulysses.
You've got the right book there.
Okay, so what is your source, Lois?
This is also Hollander, but not the same version as Duncan has been reading from. Mine is just the Inferno. Duncan may have a larger of the whole comedy, but I just have this one.
Okay, so you were just reading for
from the Inferno by Robert Hollander and Jean Hollander. Jean being the female, Jean.
Mm-hmm.
So these were lined up for and against Dante as political.
Right. Was he a Guelph or a Ghibelline? I have a note somewhere.
No, was he not a Guelph?
Yeah,
See,
I
that's
thought so.
what I'm asking.
I thought it was Guelph.
I thought
I
you read
think so.
I thought he was a Guelph. That's what I was thinking. but weren't there white Guelphs and something?
And then black, they
Yeah.
Yeah.
they had a division within the
Yeah.
Right.
group.
So
But-
those three were allies, I'm gathering, or they were fighting with one another a few verses back.
Were they?
We need a historian.
Well, let's-
We have
You read what Guido Guerra was, Lois.
yeah, Guido was the grandson of Guido Guerra, who was a notably successful Guelph political
so
leader.
they're all Guelphs.
Yeah, and he was important to the defeat of the Ghibellines at Benevento.
Okay,
The
so
second is an ally. So Tegaio Aldobrando is an ally of Guido in that same Guelph cause, and Rusticanti also a Guelph. So they're all Guelphs.
and I think that they were in Dante's faction, political.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think.
I forget if he's black or white.
He's white. I just Googled
Okay,
it.
thank
Dante
you.
is white.
All right.
And they tended to take a kind of, apparently, according to this thing Google turned up, they tended to take a rather unfriendly view of the Pope, and that got a number of exiles.
They believe that the Pope should share power with the Emperor.
Right.
That's what my note says.
Yeah, right. And that's what got Dante into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't.
I'm just reading through the Hollander comments on this section. Let's see, and he's talking about the three sinners in Rodin's Gates of Hell, the three shades, which is it's really interesting. He argues that the three shades that surmount Rodin's bronzes representation of La Porte d'Enfer, the gate of hell, eventually reflect the infernal presence and behavior of these three sinners.
Wow.
And do so in ways that counter the traditional representation of the three graces. While it is not germane to this discussion, it is perhaps also of interest to consider that Rodin's familiar Penserosa was, in the sculptor's mind, a representation of Dante. Oh, the thinker. Rodin's thinker is
It's in the art museum here.
Yeah, blown apart.
Attacked.
Yeah. But even so, isn't that interesting? Because Rodin also had the two lovers, Francesco and Paolo and Francesco, in the Gates of Hell.
and also the Count Ugolini.
Which one?
Ugolini and his 4 kids.
Mm-hmm.
He eaten the kids.
Oh.
Ate the kids.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting that Rodin in the late 19th century would be incorporating so much of Dante?
The door of the Inferno is very famous in the Musée d'Orsay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, the three graces, or the three sinners, are at the very top of the doors, the gate of hell, and then the thinker, of course, is in there.
Yeah.
What's it called? Rodin's Gate of Hell?
Yeah, gate of hell. Mm-hmm.
And where is it? Is it in where?
Well, the original, of course, is in Paris, but I believe there were 11 copies made of it. There were only so many castings allowed, and I think there are 11. I think there's one in America, in Philadelphia. And no, well, it's in at Stanford. Stanford has a Rodin sculpture garden, and one of the gates of hell is mounted there. Mm-hmm.
The original is in the Musée d'Orsay, by the river Seine.
That's so interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I'm next in the reading.
Oh yeah, and there the three sinners are up at the top.
Yeah, the very top. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Oh wow. Sorry, Decio, I interrupted you.
May I?
Yeah.
Would I have been protected from beloved, I should have thrown myself among them, and think the teacher would have suffered it. Bad as I should have burned and baked myself, my terror overmastered my goodwill, which made me greedy of embracing them. Then I began, sorrow and not disdain. Did your condition fix within me so that startlingly it wholly it stripped off? As soon as this my Lord said unto me, words on account of which I thought within me that people such as you are were approaching. I of your city am, and evermore your labors and your honorable names I with affection have retraced and heard. I leave the goal and go for the sweet fruits promised to me by the Erasmus leader, but to the center first I needs must plunge. So may the soul for a long while conduct those limbs of thine. Did he make answer them, and so may thy renown shine after thee. Valor and courtesy say if they dwell within our city, as they used to do, or if they would have gone out of it. For Guillermo Borgia, who is in torment, which as of late, and goes there with his comrades, doth greatly mortify us with his words. Next.
Do we want to discuss this? Dante seems to be saying he really loves these guys. Had I been sheltered from the fire, I would have thrown myself among them. Because
Yeah.
these guys are, I think, well thought of as Florentines. They were good guys in Florence.
And they agree with him about the Pope and the king sharing power.
And this Guillermo Borsieri was introduced in the novel number 8 by Boccaccio in the Decameron. He just arrived to the Inferno. He was a new one.
Yeah.
Guillermo.
So it was the news, the latest news.
Bring the news.
So why are these guys in hell?
It's still sodomy.
Okay.
But
And it's
the politicians rather than intellectuals. Is that the distinction,
Yeah.
John?
well,
Yes.
they're opposing the church, the Pope wanting temporal power as well as spiritual power. Which Dante did. That's why Dante got exiled.
But I think that split among the Guelphs is a little later than these guys. I think
Okay.
they're like a generation before Dante.
Hmm. I don't know. But they still, look at it similarly to Dante. And it seems as though now Guglielmo is kind of confirming where the church is, why they would consign him to hell.
John, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia entry on white and black Guelphs. After the Tuscan Guelphs had finally defeated the Ghibellines in 1289 at the Battle of Campaldino and Vico Pisano, the Guelphs began infighting. By 1300, the Florentine Guelphs had divided into black and white Guelphs. So a little before the time when this book is set, 1289 is when the fissure must have begun.
Does it say anything about what the division was between the black and the white Guelphs?
It doesn't here.
I've
I
never
haven't
seen it.
yet. I haven't seen it yet. I'll keep looking, Dee Dee. I think. Okay, so here's another one. The blacks continued to support the papacy while the whites were opposed to papal influence, specifically the influence of Pope Boniface VIII. So maybe that's your answer.
Yeah, and I think Dante put him in hell.
Actually, he couldn't put him in hell, so he did the next best thing. He had, I think it was Simony, the Circle of Simony, and there was a guy who was rammed down a tube, and he heard Dante coming, and he said, "Oh, is that you, Boniface? I hadn't thought you were coming quite so soon." So,
oh, right.
So I mean, it's just a beautiful bit of writing. So Dante makes very clear that this guy
That's where
is
he's going.
but he hasn't quite shuffled off this mortal coil.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
Where did we leave off the individual readings?
Was it Decio?
Decio read.
Yes.
So
73. Are we going to keep going?
I don't know. We said we're only going to do 90 minutes today.
Yeah, I have to go. I have a car repair. I've got to get going.
Okay. So we stopped at 73. So
Okay, so mark that and we'll begin there next time, 73. Okay, guys.
Thanks.
Okay.
thank you.
This has been great.
Good to
Okay.
see you all. Bye.
Bye.
I love everybody's research on this. Thank you.
So interesting. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Or
Bye.
okay.